home improvement horror stories and how you can prevent them. I'm Lee Rayburn, and this hour, our guest is attorney Kevin Trost from Trost LLC. He's been doing this. He's got decades of experience as an attorney handling real estate disputes and cases like the ones we're going to talk about this hour. Recently wrote an article for the State Bar of Wisconsin. The Know Your Legal Rights bi-monthly column features our guest, Kevin Trost. And if you've got home improvement horror stories or questions about how you can prevent them, you can join us at any time today by calling 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234, or email talk@wpr.org. And Kevin Trost, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Lee. It's nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to have you back. And I just want to start with when we're talking about home improvement and where the law meet. I suppose we don't want to have to go up against the law itself if we don't have to. So when we're protecting ourselves when it comes to home contractors, where do we begin?
Absolutely. Your take on it is absolutely 100% correct. If you can avoid getting into a legal action involving a contractor, all the better. And so...
From an attorney.
Absolutely. And on that front, one of the best things you can try and do is do your homework on the front end before you ever hire a home improvement contractor, to make sure that the person that you're considering as your contractor is somebody you actually want to hire and you think is going to do the kind of work that you're expecting to happen, and that there aren't going to be any crazy surprises along the way that you would not necessarily anticipate.
What's my homework, Kevin?
Your homework?
Yeah, you're telling me to do my homework for prevention. What's my assignment?
Sure. I think, once you have the name of a contractor, their company, and usually a lot of contractors are small shops, and so you might be dealing with the person that owns the company, so you might have an individual's name. You might want to start out by just researching them on the internet and seeing what pops up. There might be some helpful or informative Yelp reviews out there, or reviews on other sites about this particular contractor and their work. You could also ask the contractor for some referrals that you could call to see if, what type of work they do, if that there are actually other people out there who have been pleased with their work. You want to know the background of this contractor. Is this somebody who just started doing this type of contracting work 2 years ago? Or have they been in this business under this same name for 20 years or so? I mean, that can give you some modicum of relief and calm that you're with somebody, or you're going to be signing up with somebody who has been able to be in this business for a while. And sometimes what you see is that if a contractor may not have the best reputation, that they'll start a company under a contracting business, and that'll go on for a few years, and then the problems start popping up, right? And then they decide, hey, it's time to close this company down, and I'm going to start a new company.
Let's rebrand.
Exactly. Let's rebrand under a different name. And so that's where it's helpful to know the name of the principal, the president, the owner of that company, so that you can do some research and see if they pop up on the internet being associated with other home improvement contractors and other home improvement companies in the past.
Kevin, when I think of internet reviews, I think that most likely you're going to go online and leave a review if it's poor. If you have a good experience, generally, you're more inspired to go out and write a review if you have a bad experience. So I wonder how much that tempers the online reviews. And I'm just thinking, sometimes it can be a little unfair out there online, and anybody can write anything at any time.
It can be. And so with that, you have to try and consider where the person who's leaving that review is coming from. Is this somebody who, just had a really bad experience? Or are they making a mountain out of a molehill? And so you have to take that with a grain of salt. But some of the other research that you should do is make sure that the contractor that you're planning to sign up with is licensed. They have some sort of proof of insurance, so that if something goes haywire, they they're putting on an addition to your house, and the addition ends up causing damage to the existing part of your house, that there's insurance that come into play to cover those costs.
So who is the license agency in Wisconsin for our home contractors?
That's the State of Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services.
Okay.
Also known as DSPS.
And we can check with them?
You can check with them. They have an online portal where you can look up the licenses of various tradespeople throughout the state.
What about the Better Business Bureau?
That's a good place to look.
Okay.
See if there's complaints with them.
I want to ask you, because I've always wondered from an attorney's perspective, Wisconsin has the CCAP, the Circuit Court Access online program, where you can type in a name and find out you can find out a lot on there.
Yes, you can.
Legally wise, but I wonder from an attorney's perspective, is that useful at all, or is that just...
It can be.
Okay.
I mean, you type in somebody, a contractor's name and see if anything pops up.
Yeah.
And especially if something pops up, and usually if more than something pops up, then that might be an indicator that you have to give that contractor a second look.
So if there is a quantity issue on the CCAP when you search, you may raise some red flags.
It very well could.
And so when we're talking about home contractors and red flags, Kevin Trost, what are the biggest ones we should be looking out for?
Well, the State of Wisconsin Administrative Code requires certain things to be included for a home improvement contract. And this is for written contracts, which are required anytime there's either a deposit required before work is performed, or where there's any money that needs to be paid out before the completion of the job. And frankly, from my own experience, almost all home improvement contractors want some money either upfront or before everything is said and done.
And if there is any money up front or before the project is completed, by law in Wisconsin, there has to be a written contract for it.
Then they need to have a written contract.
Okay.
And that written contract, there's certain things that have to be included in there, such as a description of the scope of the project, which should be fairly detailed. Additionally, the overall price, the estimated price, how everything is being charged. If this is a contract that's kind of a lump sum contract where, the overall price is what you're paying, or if it's a contract where this is the estimated price where we think it's going to come in, but we're really charging on an hourly basis, so that price may or may not be accurate. The contract should specify that.
Okay.
And if it's an hourly type of arrangement, the contract should also specify what they're getting charged hourly.
Okay, so the actual hourly rate should be included in there, as well as whatever supplies they're going to need and material they're going to purchase. But that estimate can often end up being a far cry from what the end cost could be.
That is true. It can end up being different. Oftentimes there are changes that are made during the course of a project. But that's what you said there. The materials that are part of the project are something that should be specified in the course of the contract, in that written document. And, you should request that it be fairly detailed. For example, if you're doing a kitchen renovation and the, part of the contract is they're replacing your appliances, and you're getting a new dishwasher, you really should have specified in the contract, what dishwasher or brand of dishwasher you're getting, so that you're not surprised.
Get a used dishwasher for somewhere down the road.
Exactly. You're getting a dishwasher, and what shows up is something where you look at the name of the dishwasher and you're like, I didn't know that brand existed.
But I don't think it does. But isn't this the nuance of contract law, though, when you're talking about paying money up front or before completion, needing a written contract, that the devil can be in the details, and you want as many details as possible to keep the devil out?
Absolutely. And that's why you want to do your homework up front before you hire the contractor, because the more work you put into it on the front end, the less of a chance there'll be a problem on the back end.
Would I need an attorney to review this contract? Would this be something I can understand myself? Would I plug it into AI and see what it says? What do you suggest, Kevin?
A lot of times people don't need an attorney to review the contract. Okay. Sometimes it gives them an extra peace of mind to have somebody review it.
Especially a bigger contract.
Right, especially a bigger contract. Yeah. You see that more often when it's you're adding an addition to the home, or, also if you're entering into a contract for the construction of a brand new home, where you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But if it's something like replacing your roof,
yep.
Then typically you don't see that so often. People usually feel pretty comfortable with what they can, deduce themselves.
Back to the details here for a second. What about time frame in the contract? Is that a part of it?
Yeah, if you have a written contract, there is a requirement under the law that the estimated start date and estimated end date be written in there on the written contract. Now, it doesn't mean that the project's actually going to get done on that end date. And in fact, that's a lot of times what you see if there's a violation of the terms of a contract. The end date has gotten pushed down the road.
Sure.
Several 6 months, something or more. But when that happens, a contractor is obligated to advise that there's going to be a delay on the start date or a delay on the end date for the project, provide an explanation as to why.
So their legal requirement then is to actually talk to you, let you know. And I would imagine that silence from the contractor is probably
not golden.
Yeah, that's well put. Kevin Trost, our guest, founding attorney of Trost LLC, taking a look at home contractor horror stories today and what you need to know to prevent them. And you can join our conversation at 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234, or email talk@wpr.org. Let's go to Samantha in Whitehall. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Quite a few years ago, I had a friend who had this happen to him. Him and his wife had to have a new roof put on their house, and they got some Amish in the area to do the work. Well, they had to go to Indiana to a wedding. They got some of the teenagers to come in, 14, 15, 16-year-olds to come in and do the work. They said, oh, yeah, they'll be professional, they'll be fine, to do it, and they didn't think anything of it. Well, it started raining. They put tarps up and everything. It started to rain and bust through the house and everything. Now, and then they kind of just ditched on them. They didn't do any of the work they were supposed to do. Now, how would something like that today be solved? They had to do it out of pocket, but, how do you trace something like that? How would that work?
Well, I would imagine if they had a contract, you would end up going to court for it. But if there was no contract, then you have no way to prove that there was a deal made for this work. I am not an attorney. Fortunately, Kevin Trost is.
Well, right. If there was a written contract, you have some type of document in which to rely when proceeding in court. And in this situation, I don't know the particular details of this situation in the past, but it's not something that is so uncommon that you never hear of it. Sometimes, especially with roof replacement jobs, you hear of situations or see situations where contractor starts the work and they've lined up a number of jobs. And so they remove your old roofs from the shingle. They might put the new tar paper down or start to do the roof replacement and then start their next job. But your job's not done yet. And if you have a huge bad storm in the meantime, if they haven't finished sealing up the roof, then you might have some water intrusion problems.
Is that damage then? Are they liable for that damage?
That would be damage that they could be held liable for. and that would be a reason why you'd want a contractor who has insurance.
Okay.
Because usually commercial insurance will cover damage that your contractors, the insured's work, causes to another area of the house.
This goes back to prevention then, and making sure this home contractor is fully insured and can cover whatever accidents may happen or any delays that may occur or accidents that are a result of these delays.
Very true.
So that makes sense to me, but at the same time, I've seen the tarps over roofs in my neighborhoods. I've seen the pause, and I've seen how busy roofers are this summer. There's the other perspective here, Kevin, of these home contractors are doing the best they can with what they've got, with limited workforce, with questions about supply chains, and work that must get done because of the damage that's been done to homes. And I'm thinking of my neighborhood this summer. So from the perspective of the contractor, what legal rights do they have? How are they protected? Or does that fall under insurance?
Well, I mean, there are protections for contractors under the law. There's something called a right to cure law, which contractors will rely on, and that applies to remodeling type of contracts as well as new construction contracts, which requires if before a homeowner brings a claim in court, before they run off and file something in court, they have to give the contractor written notice of the problem that they've found, and give the contractor an opportunity to make an offer to make it right or to do something.
To remedy the situation.
To remedy the situation, or perhaps offer some type of financial discount on the ultimate price or something of that nature. And it's not something that the homeowner necessarily has to agree to, but the right to cure law provides a vehicle to encourage communication, to hopefully get the two sides to talk the dispute out and resolve it.
Communication seems to be the key here, both sides, that there needs to be a dialogue ongoing throughout the process, before it begins, as it's ongoing, and after completion, to make sure that everybody's satisfied.
It does. It does. And part of making sure that everybody's satisfied is on the front end to find out what type of warranty your contractor is offering on the work.
Ooh.
Because ideally, you would want some type of warranty on the work. And oftentimes, contractors will give what you might typically see is like a 1-year warranty on the workmanship, meaning the labor that they put into it. Not necessarily, the product. If the shingle itself fails because the shingle's bad, then that's an issue with the shingle manufacturer. But if your roof leaks because they put on the shingle wrong, or they misflashed the roof during the process of re-roofing your house, then that would be something that would fall under a warranty. And if a contractor is going to offer a warranty, that's something that needs to be set out in writing as part of that contract that you're signing. And that's something you want to know up front.
Sure. And that's just a warranty on the work, I would hope would come standard with most, if not all, contractors. And if not, that might be another red flag about the work that they would do.
That's very true.
Yeah. But at the same time, I could also imagine a number of disputes that would arise from whether or not it was a product being faulty or the work that was bad.
That can be that can end up being a problem or an issue that needs to get decided and figured out.
When you talk about the right to cure law for contractors, to protect contractors, to prevent this process going to the courts, from a homeowner, does that right to cure statement to contractors need to come from an attorney? Would an attorney need to draft that, or can a homeowner write up their demands or what they believe has fallen short from the contractor and submit that themselves?
That's something they can submit themselves.
Okay. So I feel like we've gone a long way in keeping you out of the process so far, Kevin.
Well, that can be a good thing. That can be a good thing. The less involvement you have to have with attorneys, sometimes the better. But the notice of the right to cure law isn't so complex that it's something that you necessarily have to have an attorney involved in simply communicating to your contractor in writing that there's an issue, there's a problem, and they need to come up with a way to fix it.
So have you come across stories in your own work that kind of mirror what we're talking about here today? And what are the best possible outcomes, and where do they come from in your experience, Kevin?
Well, the one that comes to my mind is there was a house in another part of Wisconsin where they were getting the house re-roofed. I believe it was because as a result of a hailstorm. And they had signed the contract in the winter, and the contractor was going to start in spring. And spring came, and contractor wasn't coming. And the homeowner kept following up on a regular basis saying, hey, when's this going to start? And finally they start in May, and they take the roof off the house. They start re-tar papering the underside of the shingles, re-tar papering the house on the roof, and but they don't necessarily finish, and they leave the project. They were planning on coming back, but in the meantime, a bad storm comes through, as you might expect during spring in Wisconsin, and you start getting rain in various rooms of the house. And
was the contractor insured?
In that case, I believe the contractor was insured, which...
it doesn't make it any easier for the homeowner.
No.
They've still got cleanup. They've still got the original problem. It's all been exacerbated on their top floor and their attic.
Absolutely. You end up getting water damage to, the drywall of your ceilings and in the attic. And so all that ends up having to get remediated and replaced. And so...
Requires another contractor and another contract entirely.
Oh, no, this is
it's compounding.
It's spiraling.
I can see where this is leading. So how did this case end up, Kevin?
Well, it ended up in court, but it ended up resolving. Most cases in court end up resolving without going to trial, especially on the civil side. And in this situation, that ended up being a resolution that both sides agreed to.
What happens when a contractor goes out of business? Are you just out of luck as a homeowner?
If it's somebody who's done work on your house?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, yeah. Unless they're going out of business because somebody took them over.
Okay, so if somebody, if they continue on in business as another entity, but as we started the conversation, you want to look for the primary business owner's name and not necessarily the company's name in case they're using shell companies to move back and forward.
Absolutely.
Are there any protection for the homeowners when a company owner is using the shell game of LLCs?
Oh, you can always... No, you can always try and argue that the new company is simply a continuation of the old company, and there's, it's an alter ego. One is the alter ego of the other, but that's oftentimes a long and involved legal court process.
Yeah.
And that's probably a road you really don't want to have to go down unless it's absolutely necessary and there's a lot of money at stake.
Because when you're talking about the law, it can get kind of expensive kind of quickly, at least in my experience, unless there's some way to cover court costs from the people who are at fault.
Yes, absolutely true. And there are some claims under the Wisconsin law when contractors act particularly poorly,
okay,
that allow for the recovery of attorney fees.
Okay.
But can't always count on it.
It's not okay.
And realistically, when you're talking with contractors, and often the kinds that are not paying close attention to the laws and are, violating the laws, flagrantly.
Yep.
Those tend to be smaller shops, ones where the financial wherewithal probably isn't there.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, if you bring a court action and you win everything and all your claims and you get all the money that you were seeking, you might, at the end of the day, have a beautiful paper judgment worthy of framing and hanging on your wall.
With nothing to show for it.
Exactly.
Kevin Trost, attorney at law, our guest, home contractor horror stories on The Lee Rayburn Show. Hailstorms bring roofers to the yard, but who can you trust when it comes to home contracts? I'm Lee Rayburn, and we're talking about home contract horror stories this hour and what you can do to protect yourself and your home and your bottom dollar. You can join our conversation at 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234. Do you have a home contractor horror story? Or do you have questions about what to do to prevent them or what to happen now that you've gone through it? You can also email us, talk@wpr.org. Our guest is Kevin Trost, founding attorney of Trost LLC with over 20 years of experience as an attorney handling real estate dispute cases just like these. And going back to some red flags for a second, Kevin, I want to ask you about what a good or fair amount would be for a down payment on a home contractor job, a ballpark figure. Is there any law that would tell you what would be the parameters here?
No, there's nothing that specifies how little or how much a down payment needs to be or should be. But that is something that you should pay attention to when you're considering a contractor. If they want 90% or 100% of the money up front, that should be a glaring red light that causes questions in your mind as to whether this is somebody you want to go with as a contractor.
Well, just from my perspective, I think it provides no incentive to complete the project.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't provide a lot of incentive because they've already gotten all their money.
Yeah.
And so it provides them incentive to disappear.
I could understand materials, maybe some upfront costs to get started, but the more I leave on the table for the job at the end, just from my perspective, the more incentive there is to complete the job from the contractor's perspective.
Very true. I mean, a lot of times what the deposit is intended to do is provide the contractor with upfront money to make deposits of their own on building materials so that they're not forking over a lot of money of their own in order to get materials from Menards or Home Depot or ABC Supply for your project so that they have some money to do that. But then, when you see that a contractor wants 75, 80, 90% of the money up front, then it just makes you start to wonder what's happening with that money, because certainly the upfront material costs aren't nearly that high.
What is there a ballpark percentage that you would suggest in your experience that works best for the homeowner?
Oh, it's usually a range. Some contractors will want 5%, some 10 or 25% up front. And I think any of those numbers fall within the realm of reasonability that wouldn't cause a lot of red flags to go up in my head.
Paul in Wauwatosa called, couldn't stay with us. He says performance bonds can prevent contractors from failing to complete a job.
That's true. And you see performance bonds often on much larger projects, usually that are commercial in nature.
But you wouldn't think of that for a roofer?
You don't really think of that for a roofer so much.
Okay.
I have yet to see a roofer who
is that
takes out performance bonds.
Performance bonds costly, or are they?
It's an added expense.
Okay. And you're trying to make it work in the budget that you have, and it's already going to be costly and time-consuming. But the bigger the project, the more likely a performance bond may play a role in encouraging completion.
Certainly.
Colleen emailed to ask you to discuss working with subcontractors and lien waivers, Kevin.
Yeah. Sometimes the contractor that you hired and that you signed the contract with ends up not being the person that's actually doing the work. Because sometimes your main contractor, the one you signed the contract with, will then turn around and hire a subcontractor, often a laborer or somebody like that, to come and do the physical work on your house.
Sure, I've seen that.
Sure. And so that person would be called a subcontractor because they're they're subcontracting with your main contractor. And the subcontractor ends up having rights of their own under the law in order to encourage themselves to get paid. And so there's a whole lien process that the subcontractor can initiate in order to put a lien on the property for the value of the work that they've performed in furtherance of the improvement to your house.
So wait, they can put a lien on my property if my primary contractor does not fulfill their obligation to a subcontractor?
Yes.
No.
Yes. No, they have the opportunity to do that. I mean, there's certain hoops they have to jump through to give you a notice of, their lien rights, and then give you a notice of intent to lien.
Okay.
That will give you will give you a heads up before there's actually a lien lodged against your property that there's an issue.
So when I make when I sign a contract with a home contractor, and then they start subcontracting out, you get some plumbers in there, you get some electricians in there. How protected am I as a homeowner with my contract with my primary contractor against subcontractors ending up seeking a lien on my property?
Yeah, I mean, this is another reason why you want to do your homework up front.
Okay.
That make sure you're comfortable with the main contractor that you're hiring, so that you have some assurance that they are going to go and actually pay their subcontractors, and you won't be left in a situation where your subcontractors are coming back trying to lien your property.
How do you best defend against that? Is that just knowing or having a contractor that has the experience, the track record, the reviews, everything in place?
Right. That's one way to do it. And that's why, one of your, green flags is that this is a contractor that's been, doing this for 20 years. Mm-hmm. If they've been doing this type of work for 20 years, chances are they're able to financially hold things together, and also they will financially pay their subcontractors so you don't get into that type of situation. And another thing is with the subcontractors, you can always ask up front with your main contractor whether they intend to solely perform the job themselves, or if this is something where they're going to subcontract out certain work. So that's something to be worked out on the front end.
And if they are going to subcontract some other work out, is there anything else I need to follow up on?
Absolutely. You want to make sure that the subcontractors give lien waivers once they've been paid. And so before you make your final payment on the project, you want to make sure that all the subcontractors that have worked on this project have given lien waivers, meaning that they've been paid and they're giving up their rights to be able to file a lien against your property.
Well, I can see a problem there, that they can't get their money until I pay the primary contractor their money, and then after that, if the contractor doesn't pay out the subcontractors, there's still the problem or potential for a lien.
That's always a possibility. But you want to make sure, as a homeowner, you want to make sure you get the lien waivers from the subcontractors, as well as from your prime contractor as well.
Kevin, this brings us to Wisconsin's theft by contractor law. Can you explain the law here?
Sure. There's a law in Wisconsin that's commonly referred to as theft by contractor. And that's a situation, what typically happens is the contractor gets paid, usually their deposit, and then disappears. And so they've gotten money from you pursuant to the contract, and they're not performing what they are required to perform under the contract. And so essentially they've committed theft by taking your deposit and running. The other situation you see it often come up in is where the contractor takes their deposit and they show up, they do a day or 2 days worth of work, but nothing in relation.
They don't do the job.
Yeah, they don't do the full job. They do a day or maybe 2 days worth of work, but nothing in relation. That is commensurate to the amount of the deposit that they've received, and then they disappear.
Yeah,
and those you see those kind of situations. Sometimes if it's very pervasive and there's a contractor that is doing this all the time across, oftentimes, many communities, many counties, that's when it will get prosecuted criminally.
Yep.
And the theft by contractor law is not only something that can be pursued as a civil claim, meaning the homeowner files a claim in court seeking to recover their money and damages, and I think the attorney fees are tied to that too.
Oh.
But on the other side, on the criminal side of the law, you might have a district attorney in a particular county who's seen this happen repeatedly with the same contractor, that they file criminal charges of theft by contractor against that contractor, meaning if the criminal charges go through, the contractor faces the possibility of going to prison for a certain number of years, and the judge might also impose different criminal penalties, which could include restitution, in other words, reimbursement of a certain amount of the amount of money that they've made off with.
These are the stories I see in the news most often, is theft by contractor arrests. How do those criminal charges get started?
So there's two sides to the law. There's the civil side,
right,
which is which I exclusively deal with, and then there's the criminal side of the law, which is where oftentimes it'll start through the complaints that people make to the state against somebody's license. And
I'm guessing those complaints would go to DATCAP, the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection?
Yes, you can file a complaint with DATCAP related to home improvement contractors. You can also file a complaint with DSPS, the Department of Safety and Professional Services. That's the department that oversees contractors' licensing.
Okay.
And sometimes those agencies might make a referral to different district attorneys where a contractor is being flagrantly violating the laws, particularly theft by contractor situations. And at that point, the district attorney would be the one who proceeds to file and then pursue criminal charges against that contractor.
That doesn't interfere with any sort of civil cases that might be ongoing against the contractor, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. The homeowner still has the option of bringing a civil case of theft by contractor and breach of contract and various other claims.
Whew. It seems like trial by fire. If you're going to look for a home contractor, there is a whole maze to troll through, but you can stay safe, and there are laws to protect you. And our guest, Kevin Trost, founding attorney of Trost LLC, is here to help as well with decades of experience handling real estate disputes like these. You can join our conversation at 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234. You can send an email to talk@wpr.org as well. And Kevin, so let's say that the contractor walks away from the job and you're left with a project that's half completed or barely started, and there is a dispute about what to do next or who makes the next move. Do you give them more money in order to continue? Do you, as the homeowner, what recourse do you have with a project that has not been completed?
Well, I think a lot of times the contractor would like you to give them more money.
But as the homeowner, I would not like to give them more money, so we are at a bit of a standoff here.
I think you are. And I think you should be very wary before just simply writing another check to the contractor because they say, oh, I need more money before I can start or before I can do more than 1 or 2 days worth of work. Really, that's what the deposit was there for.
Right.
And so,
but I could hear them saying, and there might be some legitimacy to it, the supplies cost more than we thought. The supply chain is, intermittent at best, and we are at, we don't have any funds to continue this project right now.
And you might hear that. And this is a contractor who works in this business and has been presumably working in this business for a number of months or years, and so they should have a reasonable feel on the pulse of what the project is going to cost and what the materials are going to cost. And so if the contractor is saying, hey, you need to pay me more money before I do any work or do more work, you should question that.
I'd more than question that. I would want to make some demands. I've got a contract, but that contract has a estimated time frame in it. So they can say they will get back to us when they have the funding to do it if you can't fund us.
They might say that. And I mean, at some point, if you can't talk things through with the contractor and reach a reasonable resolution as to what to do, you may ultimately just have to make the decision that, we're walking away from this contractor and we're going to hire somebody else to finish out the project.
Going back to this right to cure law, which was sort of the protection that these contractors have, and issuing them a list of demands or insistence from the homeowner's point of view of what you need done, what your expectations are before you begin a court process. What I'm reading between the lines here, Kevin, is having a paper record is very important. That doing this just over the phone probably leaves homeowners vulnerable, that you're going to need to have a written record of everything that takes place in every step along the way.
Yeah, for, decades ago, a handshake deal with a contractor was great. People honored their word, and you could go back to them if you thought there was a problem with what the work they did, and they would come back and they'd fix it. But sometimes that doesn't necessarily work, especially in this day and age.
And neither should phone calls, though. It would mean that it would be a series of emails. It would be a paper trail. It would be something you could take to your attorney.
True. Absolutely. Your attorney would love to see a vast paper trail with great details.
So it's just like with the contract, you want as many details as possible. With your paper trail, you'd want as much detail in there as you could about the process.
Sure. And when you're going back and forth with your contractor, it's much better if you're communicating over email or text, at least from your reviewing attorney's perspective, than people saying, well, I talked with them on the phone on this date, and he told me this.
Yeah, it's they said.
Right, because the contractor is going to come back and say, yeah, we talked on the phone, and I told him this, and
who's going to...
You're right, and then it's a question of who you're going to believe.
Let's go to Parker and De Pere next. Parker, hi.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. I am living the nightmare in which you are talking about right now.
Oh, no.
I hired a contractor, signed a contract on Memorial Weekend of 2025, and as we speak, I still have a cabinet guy in my house cleaning up a mess from the generals that walked. The story is long, and you don't have time to hear it all. I have gotten the paperwork from the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection. I plan on filing with the Better Business Bureau. I know that you mentioned a department with the licensing, but I'm going to do all that when I know, like I have a lawyer involved, and I asked for lien waivers. I never got them. I asked for receipts. That it was like pulling teeth. And in my contract, it says I have the right to review documents. They were responsible for all equipment. They took my money and they paid for extras on their line of credit at the place where they buy their stuff. And they charged me for scaffolding and caulk guns and furniture dollies, and in the contract it says that all equipment is to be supplied by them. And my lawyer asked them questions. Their accounting is atrocious. I have found out through the grapevine that they were trying to pass off other people's bills onto me, and I happened to find out they're doing this to another couple in the Fox Valley area. So I guess my thing is that mine's kind of water under the bridge. I have lawyers involved. They've disappeared after the building permit expired. They pushed it to that day of the final inspection, and then they had a punch list of things they had to fix, and they have not contacted me, nor have they been back since the middle of this June. So, and I have a family of 6, kids 11 to 16. We've been living in a finished basement with 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom for a year and a half, and they're well aware of how my family's been living. So I guess I want to know, if I go to litigation, my lawyer says that the way these guys operate, that they could just file for bankruptcy, and the money I spend, I'd be out because I'll get nothing. So I guess if I could just get some suggestions of, besides the agencies that you mentioned on your earlier, that I could file paperwork with, what else are my options? Because I don't feel like I have a lot, and it feels like the laws protect these crooked people versus honest homeowners.
Parker, thank you so much for the call, and I am so sorry about you and your family's situation. Kevin, what can we do?
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear of what your family's going through. That's horrible. It's not something anybody really wants to go through or anticipates going through. Really, one of the remedies, like you said, is going through DATCAP, filing complaints with DATCP, also filing separately a complaint with DSPS against the license for this contractor. I don't know all the facts of your case. Your lawyer is much more attuned to that than I am. So really, any advice or thoughts I could give would be at a very high level.
And I know you're in the civil courts, but this seems like, from the way Parker describes it, a prime example of theft by contractor, especially since he suggests that he is not alone in this and not the first one to be a victim of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so you might want to explore going and filing a police report regarding this situation, because those police reports get reviewed by the district attorney. And it's another way of trying to funnel things down the criminal path.
And a criminal path would lead beyond the shell game of corporations and filing for bankruptcies, and would find an individual potentially who could be criminally charged. That criminal charge could make it easier, maybe, for a civil judgment?
Not necessarily, but
trying to find a way.
But usually the facts are so blatant in those type of situations where a civil judgment isn't that difficult to get.
Okay, even if the corporation files for bankruptcy and
the
individuals move on?
Yeah, but if the situation is theft by contractor, if there's an amount that's found civilly liable under a theft by contractor law, that's likely to not be a type of debt or judgment that somebody's able to bankrupt their way out of. If I was his attorney, my concern, and this might be the concern of his attorney, is that this general contractor appears to, be doing this all over the place or in multiple places, and so there might be a real concern of how much is Parker going to sink in legal fees to get a judgment against this contractor that then may not or likely not be able to be collected.
That the well from this contractor is already dry, so trying to dip your legal cup in there is not going to yield any results.
Right. And one thing you find sometimes with these contractors is they take your deposit because you're the next job, and they use that deposit,
kind of a Ponzi scheme,
to pay off their prior jobs.
Yeah,
and which is not right.
Well, that would be a Ponzi scheme. I would think it would be very illegal.
Yes.
So filing a police report may be Parker's next best move in hoping for some justice through the criminal courts.
Right. That might be another avenue for him to pursue to get the attention of the district attorney to perhaps bring criminal theft by contractor charges against this contractor.
Parker, thank you so much again for sharing your story. And again, I am so sorry. I hope you file a police report, and I hope there is some justice down the road. And Kevin Trost, I hope we have done some good today to prevent stories like these from happening again. because they do happen. And I want to thank you for your wisdom and knowledge today, and I look forward to catching up with you soon down the road.
Thank you, Lee. It's been a pleasure.
Kevin Trost, founding attorney of Trost LLC with over 20 years of experience representing individuals, financial institutions, businesses, and insurers throughout the state and federal court systems. Appreciate his knowledge today, and man, what a story. I'm Lee Rayburn, and you are listening to WPR News. Wisconsin is one of the top maple syrup producers in the nation. Sure, there's Vermont and, of course, New York. Maybe Maine is number 3, or maybe it's us. And Wisconsin has millions of maple trees. Most of them, almost all of them, are yet untapped. But do we know how many maple syrup producers Wisconsin has? And why would it behoove us to know? I'm Lee Rayburn, and our next guest is Scott Cohn. He's the president of the Maple Syrup Producers Association. He makes his own maple syrup in Medford and is also a dairy farmer. And if you have questions about maple syrup making or enjoying, or Wisconsin's place in the maple syrup industry, you're welcome to join our conversation at 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234. Have you tried making maple syrup on your own? You can send us an email, talk@wpr.org. And Scott, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi. Glad to be here.
So for starters, can you share a little bit about the process of making maple syrup? It is slow. It is a labor of love. It takes a lot of time, I imagine, and a lot of sap.
Yeah, it does. For starters, we start in the spring, as most people know. We need, after coming out of winter, we got to get into some weather where we start getting some freeze-thaw cycles, and that's when we go out and tap the trees. Every year you have to drill a new hole in every tree and place a tap, and whether you're hooking that to there's a lot of various different ways to collect the sap, whether you're hooking it to tubing or collecting in bags and buckets. There's numerous ways to do that. And yeah, from there, then you have to take the sap and turn it into maple syrup, because believe it or not, when it comes out of the tree, it just looks like water, and it has a little sweet taste to it, but it looks like water, and we got to make that into some sticky gold, right? And so then, of course, the traditional way of doing that is taking that and boiling it over a lot of different ways. Any way you can boil water, you can boil maple syrup over wood fire, propane burners, and then we have evaporators today that are filled with fuel oil or wood. There's a lot of different ways, but traditionally it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup.
That is a lot of reduction.
Yeah, so you can imagine if you had 40-gallon jugs of milk, you got to boil off. If you were boiling that on your stove, that's a lot of steam that's got to come off to make 1 gallon of syrup.
But seriously, Scott, that just speaks to how much it's worth it every time for every gallon.
It is. And today with modern technology, we have machines, reverse osmosis machines that they can do a big part of the work. They can take as much as 75% of that water out of the sap before the boiling process starts. So that can reduce the labor by a lot with those as far as the boiling process.
And before we get to your role as the president of the Maple Syrup Producers Association, a little more on your role as a maple syrup producer yourself in Medford, Scott. How many trees are you tapping every spring?
So I tap about 5,000 of my own, and I get sap from about 500 to 1,000 more, and then I boil all the sap from that. And we produce anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 gallons of maple syrup every year.
And do you use that reverse osmosis process?
I do. I have a high vacuum tubing system in my woods to help with make the collection of the sap easier, and I do have a reverse osmosis machine to help with the labor in cooking down the maple syrup.
I've seen those tubing systems in the woods before. They are very neat, kind of like a sap highway inside the forest.
That's exactly what it is. It's like it's like a river. It flows down, flows from the tree to the tank. Yep.
Pretty sweet, literally. And then could you explain a little bit about this reverse osmosis process and how that works more efficiently than just boiling and boiling and boiling?
Yeah, so the reverse osmosis it is a machine that there's high pressure filters in the vessels, and it's essentially filtering the sap. And the purified water is we're actually making purified water, but that in our terms is the waste product, and we're keeping the concentrate, which is what we keep, which is the concentrated sugar from the maple sap that we keep off of the RO machine.
Purified waters are pretty perfect byproduct.
It is, and I get asked a lot. Well, and because I refer to it as when you can buy bottled water in the store that is
Reverse
purified
osmosis.
through reverse osmosis.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's essentially the same process as what we're doing, except our byproduct is the purified water, and we're keeping the bad, or I shouldn't say the bad stuff. Well, if you were making water, it'd be the bad stuff. We're keeping the good stuff, and getting rid of the water. And I get asked a lot, well, why don't you bottle the water? And the short answer to that is just it's a volume thing.
Sure.
There's so much in a short period of time, and it's only for a month out of the year that we have this, and you have so much of it at once. The handling it just isn't really feasible.
Yeah, but on the other hand, maple syrup water really does sell itself.
Yes.
From the sap of the maple tree of Wisconsin, it is pure bottled water. But then you got to deal with the bottling and all that. Understandable. Scott Cohen, our guest. Now, from the perspective of the president of the Maple Syrup Producers Association, do we have a handle on how many maple syrup producers can be found in Wisconsin and what makes it among the top of the list in the nation?
There is, and I wish I had a number right in front of me. I don't have a number, the exact number of producers, but our Wisconsin maple industry has been booming in the last few years, and that's a big part of why we were always stuck at number 4 in the country for maple syrup production, and years ago it seemed like we'd never, that just was where we were. You had the big 3, you had Vermont, you had Maine, you had New York, and you weren't going to catch them, and now we've been growing, we were creeping up, and we actually had a gentleman from Maine that came to Wisconsin as a speaker. He worked for the extension out there, and this was before we surpassed them. He said they were getting worried out there because we were right on their heels to take the number 3 spot, and that's just a testament of how the industry has been growing and thriving in the state of Wisconsin.
What's the reason for the growth of the maple syrup industry in our state as you see it, Scott?
I think, as you said earlier, the one thing is the untapped potential. There's so many maple trees that are available to tap, and just the way the industry has gone, it's become easier. With the technology, with the tubing systems, with the reverse osmosis, it's becoming more accessible to grow the industry, and I think just more interest in it, and then also marketing of it. We're getting more of we can market more of our state syrup out of our state, whereas it used to be our syrup here we would use some here, and there was only so much of a market. Now it's been growing the maple, not just the maple industry in Wisconsin, the maple industry, the entire maple industry in North America has been growing very, very well. And It's just that we have the capacity to really grow a lot here in Wisconsin.
And I have learned the easy way that you can use maple syrup in every meal. There's always a place for it, from breakfast to lunch to dinner. And I think, it used to be considered something for a sweet breakfast, but it can also make a perfect complement to a savory meal. I love it in a marinade. I love it in dressing. Shoot.
Yeah.
I bet you're like me. I just love it everywhere. There's no bad place to put a syrup.
Yeah, it's definitely, syrup's just it's not just for pancakes. It's, like you said, you can use it 3 meals a day in different ways. Yeah.
There was a survey done a few years ago from the UW Extension that tried to put a finger on what was making the growth in the maple syrup industry in Wisconsin. And a few things stand out to me from these results. One is that a majority of these producers have been doing it for less than 10 seasons. They seem to be relatively new in the industry. And another one is about 90% of them appear to be private landowners from this survey. Scott, what was your takeaways?
Yeah, that was, that was kind of one of the, we helped along with some of that research the extension was doing. And, it's always looking at the information and, seeing, where are our producers at, what size are they, and where they're growing. And I think that's, as I said, that was one noticeable thing. There's a lot of producers that are relatively new that haven't been doing this for a lot of years, and that's part of one of the things we try to work towards in the association is how can we not only get those people into the association where we can, where we have the education and the resources, how can we get the information of what these producers are doing to the state and to the and on a national level, so we know where our state's at. So we have a finger on how many producers we have, how many trees we're tapping, and how much syrup we're making exactly. That's one of the things that we're trying to do, and it is a little difficult at times because you do have the private landowners that are making it for themselves or just doing a small amount, and they don't think to report what they're doing because they're not making a living out of it necessarily.
But there would be some benefits, I would imagine, to find out exactly how many maple syrup producers are in Wisconsin. What would those benefits be as you see it?
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits to know, and just looking at just programs that the USDA does for helping maple producers and maple production as a whole. Just knowing how many producers there are and how much syrup we're producing kind of gives you a better pull with some of those programs, and there's grants and different things available for maple producers through that if we know what our production and our producers are.
Scott Cohn, our guest, dairy farmer, maple syrup producer in Medford, and president of the Wisconsin Maple Syrup Producers Association. And it sounds like you want to hear from all of the maple syrup makers across Wisconsin, Scott, and you'd like to find out what they're doing, how much they're doing, and how you can help. What's the best way to, if I'm a maple syrup producer, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of us and to contact us and to tell us what you're doing is to go onto the WMSPA website, which is wismaple.org, just wismaple.org, and you go into our hot topics section and you'll find a link for our 5th annual maple production survey, and that's it's an easy way to do it. We've talked about it at our meetings. The hardest part about doing it is deciding to go on and do it. It's simple. It's short and sweet. We've streamlined it to make it user friendly, and so that we get the information we're looking for. And it really takes 5 minutes to do it. I said it's just a matter of making up your mind to go and do it.
wismaple.org, and you can find the survey there, and participating in the survey may help the industry and may help you down the road. But you don't have to wait until then to get a hold of the president of the Maple Syrup Producers Association here in Wisconsin. You can also join us now with your questions, or if you're a producer yourself, you can join us at 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234, or send an email to talk@wpr.org, as Tim in Kalamazoo did. That's Michigan there, Scott. And he emailed to ask if tapping silver maples is worth it. Tim said he's heard that silver maples produce a little less sugar than traditional sugar maples. Also, how deep should he be drilling a tap hole in a tree? And what minimum diameter tree would you recommend? 3 questions there.
Yeah. So first question, all maple trees make sweet syrup. There is a difference in the sugar content and amount of sap produced from the maple tree. But if you have silver maples, go ahead and tap them. They're going to make some great tasting syrup, just like sugar maples. And a lot of that even can depend on just the wood's location and terrain of your woods can vary as much as the species of the maple tree you have. So if it's a maple, go ahead and tap it. You're going to make some great syrup. As far as when you get to tapping depth is usually about 1.5 to 2 inches. Shallower than that, you're going to kind of lose a little bit of sap production. Deeper than that, you're just causing more harm to the tree than is necessary. What was it? You'd have to refresh me on the third question.
The last one is the minimum diameter of the tree that you would recommend for tapping.
So the minimum for one tap is 10 to 12 inches. We like to have a 10 to 12 inch tree. If they get in that, you can put. It's recommended a lot of actually today with a lot of the research and a lot of the studies is really just one tap per tree. Larger trees, 24-inch in diameter or larger, can have 2 taps in them. The real goal is the longevity of the tree. We don't want to hurt the tree. And that tree, every time you drill a hole in it, you're putting a scar in that tree. And so with over tapping, you can put too many scars in the tree for what the tree is going to be able to grow. And over time, you'll have difficulty finding new places to tap the tree.
It's interesting to me that it can be a renewable resource if you do it right and know what you're doing. You could actually hurt your ability at production if you go about it the wrong way or get greedy. Yeah,
and a huge factor of production out of the tree. I always tell everybody when they come to my farm, I can't make syrup in the sugar shack. I have to make it in the woods. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, everybody thinks you go in the shack, that's where they see the syrup rolling off the evaporator, that's where you make it. The only syrup I can make in there is the sap that I get there. It starts with drilling the hole. And if I don't do a good job in the woods, that's going to impact the yield. And one of the biggest ways to do that is actually drilling a bad tap hole. And if you drill by, as I said, in that scar, there's a scar that extends about 2 feet above and below and about 1 inch or 2 on either side of the hole. If you drill into that, it's essentially dead wood and can produce little or no sap. And so that's why I say you don't want to over tap a tree, and you want to make sure the tree is big enough to grow for what you're taking out of the tree.
The syrup is made in the forest, not in the sugar shack. It's wisdom. Let's go to Adam in Madison next. Adam, hi.
Hey there. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. So I had a couple questions. Or the question I had was, I was really trying to figure out how to tap trees that are in the median areas in cities. I live in Madison right now. In the past, I had silver maples that I had tapped, but there's all sorts of beautiful sugar maples around my neighborhood that I'm kind of wondering if your guest has any insights into how that's been done publicly. Thanks so much.
I too am in Madison, Adam, and I too would be interested in tapping our sugar maples, but I don't know about the legality or potential. I don't know whether that would be right or wrong or even a possibility. Scott?
As far as I would know, I'm assuming you're asking about trees that would be on the city's property or along that lines.
Yeah, I
Not
think you
private
mentioned
property.
the median.
Yeah.
So
So I think that would be a matter of going to the city or the township or whatever district you're in and talking to the city council and just getting permission. I don't think. I think that's where you would have to start. I don't have an answer on that in within city limits or within township limits.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of people in towns that I see, and some of that might be private property, some of it might be in medians. But I think that would just be a matter of the best way to do it would be to reach out to the city council or whoever is in charge there and ask them about it. And if you're good and ask them, I would say as long as they don't have rules or regulations against it, it's probably a good possibility that you would be able to do that.
well, I would just suggest for Adam and anybody else, if it's the neighborhood's trees and you tap them, then it has to be the neighborhood's syrup. You're going to have to share.
Well, yes, that. Yeah, once you start, you might be going down a rabbit hole of everybody's going to want in on it.
You're going to start some syrup fights in the neighborhood if it gets down to it. But it is interesting because I'll go back to the survey from a couple of years ago, and again, you've got a survey ongoing now at wismaple.org, finding out who the maple syrup producers are in Wisconsin, how they're doing, and what they're doing. We've got millions of maple trees in Wisconsin, most of them left untapped, and 90% of the maple producers in Wisconsin are private landowners, that this is coming from their own personal property, Scott.
Yeah, and that's one of them things. You know, just you have landowners out here, and there is a little bit of incentive with that for landowners in the country. A lot of townships and areas, you can get a little bit of a tax break. You can take recreational land, and now if you start tapping trees on it, you can turn that into forest production tax assessment, and that'll help a little bit on the taxes. Along with you get pure maple syrup of your own that you've produced on your own,
right?
And possibly have the potential to have some extra income there, and that's just. And again, as I said before, there's a huge untapped potential in Wisconsin, and people I think are realizing what they can do with it.
What role could the changing climate in Wisconsin play on the future of the maple syrup industry?
There's actually a really good speaker the speaker I mentioned earlier from Maine, and he talked a lot, and I refer back to him speaking on that, and he was talking about the changing climate, and the climate's changed forever. There's no argument. As he affecting the maple industry, the way he said it is with all of the studies they've been doing over the past 50 to 100 years. Really, the biggest effect he sees in the nearer future or the near to long-term future for the maple industry is that the seasonal. He said it doesn't look like it'll affect. It's not changing fast enough to say we're not going to have a maple season, but instead of and I think I do feel that I've noticed that in our maple woods. It was always about the middle of March we would start tapping trees, and that's when our maple production season would start. And the last 5 to 10, I don't know if I want to quite say 15 years, but the last years, it's been the end of February, beginning of March, we've been starting our maple season. And so I don't think he's far-fetched on his climate statistics, and I don't think there's any reason to worry that we won't be able to make maple syrup, but I think some of the old wives' tales of waiting till March 14th or the middle of March to tap trees have to be questioned a little bit.
Does that shorten the season for being able to tap these maple trees?
I haven't noticed, again, from our standards and even from a lot of people that we talk to, I don't think it's shortened the season as much as it is. As I said, it's moved the start date a little earlier, moved the end date a little earlier, and that was what he had said with their surveys and studies that they found on the climate affecting it. and I do believe that I've noticed that on our farm also. And I say that now, and next year it'll be cold until the end of March, and we'll be making syrup into the first.
Well, as long as you're making syrup, I don't care when it is. And it is a nice reminder that folks who are making syrup in Wisconsin, there are a number of potential benefits to reaching out to the Wisconsin Maple Syrup Producers Association to find out what they can do for you, and so that they can learn a few things from what you're doing and maybe learn a thing from you as well. Hey, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're busy, but I would invite you back anytime to talk maple syrup and maybe taste a little bit along the way.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to come back if you have me again. That'd be great.
You bet. Scott Cohn, dairy farmer, maple syrup producer in Medford, president of the Wisconsin Maple Syrup Producers Association. That website again, wismaple.org. I'm Lee Rayburn, and you're listening to WPR News. Let's talk farmers markets. What do you love about yours? What makes yours special, and what makes you keep coming back again and again all season long? I'm Lee Rayburn, and our phone number is 1-800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234. Our email is talk@wpr.org. And this half hour, we're looking at the science of farmers markets and what they can deliver beyond just produce, beyond just a direct connection to our local farmers. There may be something more. And here to share his research with us is Brett Shaw, an environmental communications specialist for the Division of Extension and a professor in the Department of Life Sciences Communication at the UW-Madison. And Brett, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you very much, Lee. I'm looking forward to participating today.
What got you interested in researching farmers markets? Was it the Dane County Farmers Market and just looking around and being like, there is something to learn here?
Well, definitely the Dane County Farmers Market played a role, but I've loved farmers market all over the place, whether it's, California, East Coast, Midwest. It always kind of gives me a feeling of what farmers are growing in a specific area, what kind of community organizations are active in the area. And I always feel like it's a good place to pick up on a pulse of what's going on locally, certainly from a growing standpoint and an agricultural standpoint. So I started working in this space about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even more, focusing specifically on farmers markets in Wisconsin, and how to empower farmers market managers to promote local food more effectively, like what motivates consumers to be interested in local foods. And over time, we received a grant about 3 or 4 years ago now from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where we were able to do a national study. So it's a national survey, the first of its kind in almost 20 years, so we were able to survey over 5,000 people and get a really good sense of how farmers market, what are people's motivations for going to farmers markets? What are their barriers for not going into them? Who is most likely to participate in going to farmers markets? How does it contribute to civic outcomes like community engagement and sense of community well-being? So it's been a long journey, and this most recent grant that we've had has allowed us to go much more in depth, looking at a national audience, which has been really exciting.
So you studied farmers markets across the country, and I'd imagine that farmers markets have come a long way in the last 20 years, or maybe it's not farmers markets that have changed as much as the community's perception and relationship to them.
Right. I do think the number of farmers markets has grown significantly in the last 20 years. Possibly has been reaching a plateau over the last 5 or so, but we're talking about a count of the estimates vary, but there's over 8,000 active farmers markets in the United States. So they're a very common phenomenon at this point. And I think during recent times with COVID or foodborne illness, we're also seeing that not only are farmers markets enjoyable to go to, they're also an important part of food security because you can get access to local lettuce or eggs or different things. So there's lots of benefits the farmers markets bring. One of them being food security and making sure that we have access to food when there are disruptions to the food supply.
I saw one of your studies published last year took a look at the top challenges to attending farmers markets and the reasons people don't go. And it turns out that forgetting the day of the farmers markets appears to be part of some of your results.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I can relate to, because if you want to go to the grocery store, you just go when you want to. But if you want to go to the farmer's market, you have to go to a specific place at a specific time. So we have run ad campaigns helping people to remember when their local farmer's market is. But yeah, across the board, the most significant reason why people don't go to the farmer's market is because they forget it. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that, through signage, through social media, through news, through sharing, is you can help people become less likely to forget their farmers markets. So there's, of course, other reasons too, like, potentially feeling like you don't belong, or a parking, or a perception that it's too expensive. But we did find, again, that the most significant reason was just simply forgetting about it.
And I'm laughing because it makes sense to me. Yeah. And it is an interesting contrast to what traditionally we consider as the grocery store experience, is when you need it, you just go get it. The convenience store experience, you go down to the corner and pick it up. But you have to sort of plan for the farmer's market. Does that begin to help you explore who attends a farmer's market, who's likely to go, and how often their attendance would be?
Yeah, so one of our studies specifically did look at what audience segments or people with similar characteristics are most and least likely to attend the farmer's market. So on the one hand, we learned from our research that despite stereotypes, it's a pretty broad cross-section of Americans that go to the farmer's market sometimes. Like most 81% of Americans have been to a farmer's market, which is a lot of people. But we found that there were a couple groups that were the most likely to show up. So one we called the highly engaged, and this group was more diverse. They really like the community aspects of farmers markets. They think they're fun. It's a bit of a social thing. It's not just a shopping experience. We also found a group which we call the health conscious. And these folks are, they care about not having GMOs. They like the idea of their food being produced more sustainably. They like supporting their local farmers. So there's kind of health reasons. And we also found some groups like convenience eaters, for example. We think about people eating fast food or picking up a snack at the local gas station or convenience store. Those folks aren't as likely to go to the farmers markets. There's a practical people that aren't necessarily looking to have fun in their shopping experience. They make a list, they want to stick to the list, they have certain things they make, and that's not bad or good. I mean, farmers markets don't have to be for everyone, but we are identifying some of the groups that are the most likely to participate.
I'm curious how it compares to what you would consider the stereotype of a farmer's market attendee.
I mean, I think there's some stereotype that is overstated, but there's some truth to it, which is that shoppers are more likely to be females and perhaps more affluent. And these, by the way, there's lots of exceptions to what I'm saying. But women are also more likely to buy food at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that that's so different given norms in families. The women are often more likely to plan food and cook it. And again, when we use these kind of stereotypes, there's a lot of different exceptions to this. Like I go to farmers markets every week. A lot of my friends do. So when I say that women are more likely to go, that leaves lots of room for all kinds of people, go, even if women are more likely to go. And they tend to be a little bit older, but excitingly, we did find there are definitely younger cohorts of people, both men and women, that are really excited about going, and they really like some of the experiential elements of it. They like going and meeting the local farmer and hearing the live music that's playing and getting a warm piece of a cheese bread, like, and hanging out with their friends. So there's really all kinds of people showing up, but that's one stereotype that has some truth to it in some context.
Brett Shaw, our guest, he is studying farmers markets nationwide with a recent survey. He's the co-author of a 2025 national study of farmers market attendance and demographics, an environmental communications specialist for the Division of Extension, and a professor in the Department of Life Sciences Communication at the UW-Madison. If you have questions about farmers markets, who attends, and what to expect, if you have comments about your favorite or anything else to join, 1-800-642-1234, 800-642-1234, or email talk@wpr.org. So, Brett, what does the farmer's market deliver that goes beyond food? What is it more than just the direct connection to the farmer? What have you found there?
Yeah, well, one of the most recent studies that we had specifically found, and some people might go to farmers markets and say, yeah, of course it contributes to a sense of community, but those are stories and anecdotes. And of course, stories are important, but we were able to look at different dimensions of community participation. So there's civic engagement, like volunteering, voting, communicating with organizations. And there's also a sense of community well-being, like I belong to my community. I feel connected with my community. So those are different dimensions of civic engagement. And what's exciting about farmers markets is you go there and you see someone registering people to vote, or someone from the Humane Society talking about different opportunities to adopt an animal, or a food security organization, or people representing different political views. Like maybe we end up seeing and talking with people that we otherwise might not speak with in the course of our normal day. And coming back to the supermarket idea, if you start showing up at the same market every week, the third or fourth time you see someone, you might say, hey, this person feels familiar. We found in one of our earlier studies that you were referencing that 11% or 12% of people say they've met a new friend at the farmer's market. And in an era where we've heard about the epidemic of loneliness, if people are making friends and connecting with their neighbors, and we hear about divides within society, if people are connecting and feeling better about their communities as a result of going to the farmer's market, we think that's a really positive thing.
The idea of isolation as being some epidemic loneliness has certainly come up over and over again, and this certainly seems to suggest that farmers markets can provide an alternative to that. But it also sounds like it provides something else we've been losing, or anecdotally anyway. I can't speak scientifically to it, Brett, like you can. But these third spaces, places where we can go where there isn't a cost of admission. You don't have to buy a cup of coffee to stick around. Someplace you can go to connect with people that doesn't have to cost you anything.
Right. We just actually shared some information with an international organization that focuses on specifically that. And farmers market, I think, are the most public manifestation of the third space or the public space that we share. But we also have public markets, we have festivals, we have all kinds of things. And we've been noticing in society that attendance at churches or civic organizations or different things has been falling off in many circles. And these third spaces, like farmers markets, play an important role on connecting us to other people in our communities and building a sense of community and a sense of that we want to participate in our communities, that we belong, that kind of thing. And that, simple as it might sound, it's a very a powerful finding.
Yeah, because it's something that has been argued that we've been missing or we're losing, but also, while we might be losing it in certain third spaces, farmers markets, one of the spaces where we can find it. And you talk about civic engagement and community well-being and how this is found in the farmers market. How does the science study this, Brett? If you can you explain that to a non-scientist, how you make these connections?
Yeah, sure. So there's a variety of different ways. I mean, you can use focus groups, talking with groups of people about what they think. You can do interviews and collect qualitative data. What we specifically did is we ran a national survey. We wanted it to be nationally representative, so we oversampled some groups. Like, for instance, young folks tend to be less likely to fill out surveys. We oversampled them. People of color sometimes won't fill out surveys as much, so we oversampled them as well. So then our first study we have, which you had mentioned, is kind of a descriptive look. Is what are the motivations people have? What are the things that stand in people's way? What do people do when they're at the farmers markets? All that kind of stuff. But in the study that we're looking at about community engagement and perceptions of community well-being, we basically will do statistics where we're able to look at how levels of farmers market of attendance, how frequently we attend farmers markets, also relate to different outcomes, such as community participation, such as a sense of community well-being. And then, of course, there's lots of reasons why there might be a direct linkage between farmers markets, like maybe, for example, people that are more civically engaged are more likely to go to farmers markets. So we're able to do some things within our statistics to look at how do farmers markets work with other communication medium, like local news, national news, social media, information from community organizations. So we're not suggesting that farmers market is the only places where people go to build community. We're looking at how does farmers market contribute to a larger information ecosystem to enhance community outcomes.
It also sounds like you're not necessarily making a causation argument here.
No, we can't with what we call a cross-sectional survey.
Yeah.
We think that if we look at the collective data that we've collected over time, both in Wisconsin and nationwide, that we're able to build a pretty strong argument, but you can't make a direct causation argument, like you said,
Grant emailed to say he's a regular at all farmers markets in Madison. He feels very lucky in Madison to have such a diverse selection of foods that are brought directly from producers. Grant's gotten to know quite a few producers over the years, and he's learned a lot from them. He says he's also discovered many new ingredients in the process, and there are many products in a farmer's market that can't be found in a grocery store. Farmers markets are a win-win in so many ways, but more than just the produce, more than just what Grant gets from he also gets to meet the people who are producing them. I remember meeting my honey guy last year, and it changed the way I saw honey.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's a super fun part of farmers markets. I mean, whether people are selling meat or baked goods or produce. And you can also, in Wisconsin, we have a lot of vendors who are Hmong in background. So you can try new vegetables that you haven't tried. You can try heritage varieties that you haven't tried before. You can learn about the different ways that people grow vegetables. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested in agriculture and how your food is made locally, it's a fantastic place to get to know your vendors. So I think that's a really good point.
And in the current sense of food recalls that are happening on a national scale, local produce can certainly speak volumes. I would imagine, as somebody who researches this, with all the recalls that are happening right now for national produce, there'd be at least a desire to find out what sort of immediate impact that could have on local produce and providers.
Yeah, I mean, like I was sharing before, when supply chains were interrupted during COVID, farmers markets in many places were considered an essential service. So they weren't affected as much by these big supply chain issues. So that was a big deal. When there was the issue with eggs, I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago now, I mean, the prices at the store were getting to be like $8, $9 a dozen. You might go to a farmer's market and feel like, hey, those are a little more expensive than the cheapest eggs. But when there's a problem, they're actually less expensive and safer. So we're not like down on grocery stores or anything like that, but there are benefits to having, in addition, a local option like farmers markets where you're not as likely to be influenced by problems with shipping or foodborne illness or that kind of thing.
Brett Shaw, where does your research on farmers markets go next? What questions or hypotheses are you still looking to find conclusions to?
Well, we have two studies that are in review and in the pipeline. One, we did a national social media marketing test exploring what messages resonate most with getting people interested in going to the farmers market. And we tested different messages. So this was in 11 different markets in 6 different states like Alaska, Vermont, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado, etc. And we tested like supporting your local farmer as one message, sustainable food. But the message that resonated most was having fun, like join the fun at your farmer's market. And this was true in every state, in every market, that people were interested in the fun aspects of farmers markets. And we also have a study that's under review right now that I'm really excited about, is that many markets accept SNAP benefits for households that are lower income. And what we found in this is that at markets that accept SNAP, and particularly ones, many markets offer like a double bucks or those kind of things where if you spend your SNAP dollars. So these are like providing fresh produce to people where it's normally pretty expensive. I mean, even just going to a grocery store, getting fresh food can be more expensive. And so we found that people that use their SNAP benefits at the farmers market, and especially the double bucks, they not only report eating healthier, they also report feeling more connected with their communities. So as far as like the social fabric of our nation, if we can bring people together of different socioeconomic classes, different political ideologies, different, ethnic backgrounds, we see that as a win. Like that's like a really exciting thing.
And farmers markets would be a third space where that would make it all possible, given some conditions or opportunities?
Yeah. And one thing that we're really excited about is we have been working with the Farmers Market Coalition, which is a national organization that supports farmers markets all over the place. And so we have been producing resources that are available on the Farmers Market Coalition website. And these are things that farmers market operators can use, like social media posts, strategies, different things they can use to sort of up their game and improve their marketing and outreach to grow not only the traffic at their markets, but also ideally how much people spend at the market. Because at the end of the day, too, the economics of this are really important. Like the market vendors don't want people just showing up to have fun. They want them coming to buy food. So we kind of see it as like, yeah, you can have fun, you can buy food, You can meet your local farmer. You don't have to pick just one benefit. They can all be true at the same time.
Have you done any research into the farmers or producers that are there and the effects on them?
We have done a study looking at interviews of farmers market managers or operators to look at their different needs. Like you can imagine that an urban market may have different needs than a rural market or a suburban market. That was done in Wisconsin several years ago. And you find like a rural market's not going to have issues with parking, as an example,
Sure.
but an urban one might. And so in that study, we looked at what are the different needs of markets. So it wasn't at the vendor level. I've also done some work supporting Hmong farmers and vendors, and working with Extension and partners to figure out how we could be more supportive. Like if you go to some farmers markets, I'm in Wisconsin, 75+% of the people, of the vendors are often Hmong.
Brett, we'll have to leave it there, but I thank you so much for sharing your research with us today and showing us how it is helping farmers markets across the country. Thank you for your study and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Brett Shaw from the Department of Life Sciences Communication at UW-Madison and Division of Extension. I'm Lee Rayburn. Thank you for being a part of the show today. We will see you tomorrow here on WPR News.